What's up, Kenra? It's your girl Lo Wheeler, and I'm here for a beach-inspired salty color. This is just everything. I'm so excited to share this with you because it's just gonna unlock that side of your brain that might be conforming to balayage or foil. Today we're gonna break some rules and do a combination of these techniques together. Let's get started. Here is Jessica's parting. For this technique, plot twist, there's gonna be foiling and balayage. She has a lot of hair, so let me walk you through her sectioning. We're gonna start with balayaging through the back of this hair, and we're gonna work through doing panel placement, and that's gonna allow us to get through this whole back of her hair in a really smooth and fluid way. Now we've sectioned out the front of her face frame and we're going to foil that. So it's just gonna give a little more brightness, a little bit of more dimension to build onto this balayage, because as we know, if we were to balayage her whole head, we kind of look at one general tone because she has no color pre-existing in her hair. So to add that extra dimensional color into a virginal client, we want to foil the front and then paint out the back. So we're gonna start here and work through the back, and it's just going to be horizontal sections up the back in that really nice diffused baby light effect with our panel placement. So when I'm starting a project like this, I just wanna make sure that I'm doing things that make sense to me. So what makes sense is starting in the back and building towards her front because she will lift super easily. So I've mixed my lightener on the thicker side. She has very thin angel-like hair and there's a lot of regrowth. So the subsectioning is more important in these type of settings just because you want to make sure that you're working neatly. I'm not a huge stickler for partings, but when you have a lot of flyaways and just baby fine hair, that's the time to just like really prep with a solid sectioning strategy. And so I'm making my life a little easier on the back end by sectioning her out, heavier than you would typically see from me. Holding her hair nice and taut, and I'm just layering the lightener on. I want to make sure that it's nice and coated because we want this lightener to stay hydrated as long as possible. If you paint and there's like a thin little veil of lightener, that will easily dry and affect your lift. So I am very generous with my lightener. And then as I pick up each section, I just want to make sure that it's soft and blended out on the bottom. Anything you paint with a panel is going to diffuse out. It's pretty much the opposite of what you see. So when you look at a big panel like this, when we comb it out as we finish it and tone it, it's going to separate and create really soft diffusion. All this, I decided to section and move to the side so that the weight of her hair doesn't collapse onto itself. You want to make sure when you're painting, if they have a lot of hair to work with, like Jess does, you can divide the hair in a way that bricklays the sections. This is going to help keep your placement so clean. The other thing is having cotton on hand. So if you have somebody with like super baby fine hair that the hair can't really support the weight of a ton of product on it, you can use cotton to support each section and keep it from collapsing onto itself. Here we're not going to use cotton, so I'm bricklaying my sections because I'm doing a very heavy coverage. I'm using a bigger brush to help me load the product onto my brush so I don't have to keep taking little scoops of lightener. I'm bringing my tension halfway through the hair. I highly recommend if you're new to balayage to have your tension higher and then give yourself that tension, because you don't want to be too loosey-goosey and push the product through the hair. You just want to lay a really thick layer onto the surface. The word balayage means sweeping. So we want to sweep the product on the top surface. And depending on the outcome and the base we're starting with, you might saturate, you might do any number of other techniques, but in this case we're just keeping it on the surface. And if anything touches underneath, we just want to make it blended. Let's check that underneath. Okay, so now that I have this nice saturation, I'm just going to drop this piece lightly over where the other two pieces underneath are separated. So it's not like one sheet of color laying on top of the next, laying on top of the next. So it's about just really being conscious of what you're doing and making sure that you're creating little pockets of air, or putting a little sheet of foil or a little piece of cotton in between if it starts collapsing onto itself. And I'm feathering that transition point with my wrist. So up near the transition point, we want to feather from the wrist. And then as we work the product further down, we can start bending at the elbow. And I'm always picking up product to lay on top of the section. With really wide sections like this, it's okay if you see it splitting a little bit as you glide your hand further down the section. And I always like to think about that as where the hair will naturally split, so I can take back end of my comb, make sure that's like as clean as possible. It's not a problem. Anything that gets away from you on the sides, all you have to do is always remember to saturate the ends, because you don't want to just like roll off the lightener as you let go. Now we're working off this big parietal section, so I'm just going to carve out 3 subsections. So we're going to take this next large parietal section, divide it into 2, and then we're going to work through and create more panels. Okay, so here's a little status update for Jessica. We did a brick-laid panel placement, and then as we moved up the sides of her mids, we just did smaller sections of the same thing, working up the sides of her head. So where we're at now is we have this beautiful little money piece area. So we're going to foil this, and we're going to use 30 volume. She's lifting so well with the blonding in the back, but because we're now introducing the element of foil and the heat conduction of that, it's going to drive her lift so pale. So we're looking at like a level 7, adding in the 30 volume and foil, we're going to lift her all the way to like a 10, which will be so beautiful, beachy, bright, aesthetic. So to do this, we're looking at where her hair naturally is. She has a lot of fuzzy regrowth. How I'm going to choose to look at this is how much of percentage of lightness can we get from the cheekbone down through the ends. Really not going to be hyper focused on her roots because those are going to be shadowed, but I will go in at the sides of her temples first, and we're going to just pick it up, slice, tip out, slice, tip out, slice, tip out. And that's how we're going to get a full coverage through this small section. And then we'll jump over to the other side and do the same. So these are gonna be little micro sections just because she has a lot of short pieces in there, but it's just gonna all blend out in the finish. All right, besties, here is our foil placement. It took a bit of improving just because she has so much at the roots and so little through the ends. So I did my best to kind of tease, create transitions, create high points. So this is what we're looking at. There's some teasy elements in here. Most of it's living off root. So we'll kind of go and take this and blend it in the finish so that it has a really nice flow with the balayage in the back. I'm going to pop open these foils and pull them as they reach a level 10. Okay, this is our amazing lift. We can see we have this warm butter blonde from the balayage and this bright, just very raw blonde from the foils. And this is exactly where we want to be. So in order to get a very soft finish, we're going to shadow root with 6N. And for just a dab of customization, I'm gonna put a ribbon of 6 NUA in there just to shift towards a slight cooler green undertone. So the fact that I'm doing that instead of just leaning into the 6 NUA is because the 6 NUA will be a little bit too harsh. So instead of going all the way there, we're just gonna integrate a ribbon in just to offset and customize. The front of her hair, we're gonna go in with a clear, and then the back we'll go in with a 10V. So we're gonna start this toning in the back of her head. Here is our fresh tone. Just a little recap, we did 6N with a ribbon of 6 NUA and then blended it into 10V through the back just to neutralize slightly, not to cover up. And in the front, these pale ribbons were just raw lift plus clear. I'm just going to layer in some of my favorite Kenra styling products and then show you the end results. Look at this result. Are we just like so excited? I am just dropping dead right now over this. It has all the beautiful characteristics that you see in like the coastal cool girl aesthetic. The blended soft root that harmonizes with the golden buttery mids, and that's all due to our balayage. Then we have the bright, pale, and pure raw lift of those foils in the front. This is just so beautiful. I hope you try this technique. If you try it at home, please tag me. And if you want more inspo, please like and subscribe to the Kenra Professional YouTube channel. You're gonna see so much more education from me and other amazing artists. And if you wanna see more of this, you can follow me on Instagram at @low_Wheeler Davis. Okay, bye.